Picture this: a small town in Ohio, the kind where everyone knows your name and the biggest excitement is the Friday night football game. It's 1998, and 19-year-old Lila Harper is hustling away in a tiny bakery called Sugar Dust, kneading dough and dreaming big. She's got flour on her apron, a sparkle in her eye, and a knack for turning butter and sugar into magic. Lila's not just any girl. She's got plans. Maybe one day she'll open her own shop, fill it with the smell of cinnamon rolls and the sound of happy customers. But right now she's just an apprentice, learning the ropes, and life feels like it's on the edge of something amazing. Lila's world revolves around two things: her baking and Caleb Dawson. Caleb's the town's golden boy, a 20-year-old guitarist with a crooked smile and a voice that could melt ice. He plays with a local band, strumming his way through gigs at dive bars and county fairs. To Lila, he's more than just a pretty face with a guitar. He's the guy who sits with her after her shifts, talking about running off to Nashville or New York, where he'll hit it big and she'll bake for the stars. "We're a team, Lila," he'd say, his fingers brushing hers over a sticky table at the diner, and she believed him, hook, line, and sinker. But here's where it all starts to crack. One humid summer night, after a gig at the Rusty Nail bar, Caleb pulls Lila aside. She's got that flutter in her chest, thinking maybe he's about to say something sweet. Instead, he looks at her with those hazel eyes and drops a bomb. "I'm leaving," he says, voice flat. "Got a shot with a band in Chicago. It's my break, Lila. I can't pass it up." She blinks, waiting for the part where he asks her to come along. It doesn't come. "What about us?" she asks, her throat tightening. He shrugs, just shrugs, and says, "You'll be fine. You always are." And just like that, he's gone, his beat-up van peeling out of the parking lot, leaving her standing there with nothing but the echo of his last chord. Lila's reeling, but she doesn't have time to fall apart. A week later, she's staring at a pregnancy test in the bathroom of her cramped apartment above the bakery, 2 pink lines. Her hands shake as she clutches that little stick, the weight of it sinking in. Caleb's gone, and now she's got a baby on the way. She's scared out of her mind, but she thinks, "Okay, I've got my parents. They'll help me through this." Oh, how wrong she was. Because what happens next? It's not just heartbreak. It's betrayal on a whole other level. Lila thought losing Caleb was the worst thing that could hit her, but the real storm was brewing right under her own roof. Stick around, because this story's just getting started. So Lila's standing there in her tiny bathroom, staring at those 2 pink lines like they're a ticking time bomb. Her heart's pounding, her mind's racing. What now? Caleb's long gone, chasing his rock star dreams in Chicago, and she's 19, alone, with a baby growing inside her. She's terrified, sure, but she's got this flicker of hope. Her parents, Gerald and Margaret Harper, they're not perfect, strict, old school, care way too much about what the neighbors think. But they're family. They've gotta have her back, right? She takes a deep breath, tucks the test into her pocket, and heads downstairs to face the music. It's a Tuesday night, and the Harper house smells like pot roast and tension. Gerald's at the kitchen table, hunched over the newspaper, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. Margaret's fussing with dishes in the sink, her apron tied tight like armor. Lila hovers by the doorway, her hands sweaty, and finally blurts it out. "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you. I'm pregnant." The room goes dead quiet. The clatter of dishes stops. Gerald's paper rustles as he lowers it, slow, like he's bracing for a fight. Margaret turns, her face pale, a dish towel twisting in her hands. "What did you just say?" she whispers, like she's hoping she heard wrong. Lila stammers through it, how Caleb left, how she didn't plan this, how she's scared but wants to make it work. She's barely finished when Gerald slams the table, his voice booming. "Pregnant? At 19? You've gone and ruined everything, Lila." Margaret's eyes well up, but she doesn't jump in to defend her. Instead, she chokes out, "What will people say? The church, the neighbors, oh God, we'll be the talk of the town." Lila's pleading now, tears stinging her eye. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I just need you guys to help me figure it out. Please." But Gerald's face is red, veins popping in his neck. "Help you? You've shamed us, thrown away every value we raised you with." It's a screaming match now. Lila's begging, "I'm still your daughter," and Gerald's firing back, "Not like this, you're not." Margaret's sobbing into her hands, muttering about disgrace, but she doesn't stop him. Then Gerald drops the hammer. "If you're so grown up to get yourself into this mess, you can handle it on your own. Get out. Pack your things and go." Lila freezes, the words hitting her like a punch. "You're kicking me out?" she whispers, voice cracking. Gerald just points to the stairs, his jaw set. "No." The rain's coming down hard outside as Lila stumbles to her room, the house creaking around her like it's ashamed, too. She grabs her old duffel bag, shoving in a couple of sweaters, her favorite jeans, and that beat-up tin box of baking tools she's had since she was a kid. Every sob she chokes back feels like swallowing glass. Downstairs, Margaret's crying louder, but she doesn't come up to stop her. Gerald's barricaded himself in the garage, slamming tools around. Lila pauses at the front door, rain pelting the windows, and calls out, "I'm leaving." Margaret whimpers, "Lila, wait!" But Gerald bellows from the garage, "Let her go!" And that's it. The door slams shut behind her, the sound echoing in her chest. She's soaked in seconds, standing on the porch with nowhere to turn. Caleb's gone. Her parents just threw her out like trash. But then she remembers Amos, her granddad. He's a gruff old guy, lives 2 hours away in Dayton, fixing cars and minding his own business. They've never been super close, but he's always been kind in his own quiet way. She digs her flip phone out of her pocket, hands shaking, and dials his number. It rings twice before his gravelly voice picks up. "Lila? What's wrong, kid?" She can barely talk through the tears. "Grandpa, I need somewhere to go. Can I come stay with you?" There's a pause, then he says, "Get your butt over here. I'll leave the light on." And just like that, she's got a lifeline. But the real fight? It's only just beginning. Lila's standing at the bus stop, rain dripping off her hood, clutching that soggy duffel bag like it's all she's got left. Which, honestly, it is. The 2-hour ride to Dayton feels like a lifetime, the hum of the Greyhound bus drowning out her racing thoughts. She's 19, pregnant, and just got kicked to the curb by her own parents. Caleb's a ghost, her future's a blur, but there's one thing keeping her from falling apart. Grandpa Amos. He's her last shot, and she's praying he doesn't turn her away, too. When the bus pulls into Dayton, it's past midnight, and the air's thick with that late summer dampness. Lila trudges 3 blocks to Amos's little house, a squat, weathered place with peeling paint and a front yard littered with old car parts. The porch lights on, just like he promised, and before she can even knock, the door swings open. There's Amos, 60-something, wiry and tough as nails, with grease-stained hands and a face full of lines from a hard life. He's in a faded flannel shirt, hair a mess of gray, and he doesn't say much. just looks her up and down, sees the red eyes and the soaked clothes, and mutters, "Come on in, kid. You look like hell." Inside, the house smells like motor oil and burnt toast, a weird mix that somehow feels safe. It's cluttered. Tools on the counter, a sagging couch with a quilt thrown over it, a radio crackling some old country tune. Amos doesn't ask what happened right away. He just shuffles to the kitchen, puts a kettle on, and hands her a mug of tea that's strong enough to wake the dead. "You're staying here," he says, not a question but a fact. "Long as you need, but you gotta pull your weight, none of that moping crap." Lila nods, too choked up to argue, and for the first time in days, she feels like she can breathe. The next few weeks are a grind. Lila's morning sickness hits hard. She's hugging the toilet half the time, barely keeping down Amos's overcooked eggs. But he's there, gruff but steady, telling her, "You're tougher than this, girl. Keep going." He's a mechanic, spends his days fixing beat-up Chevys in his garage, but he sees Lila's got something too, her baking. One night, she's messing around in his tiny kitchen, using that old tin box of tools to whip up a batch of lemon scones. Amos takes one bite, grunts, and says, "Hell, kid, you could sell these." That's all it takes. She starts small, baking for neighbors, dropping off cookies at the garage for Amos's customers. Word spreads, and soon she's got a little side hustle going. Months roll by, and Lila's belly grows. Amos turns his spare room, a junk-filled cave, into a nursery, cursing under his breath as he hauls out old carburetors to make space for a crib he built himself. When the day comes, it's a stormy April morning. Lila's water breaks right there on Amos's cracked linoleum floor, and he's tearing around, grabbing keys and yelling, "Let's move, kid!" They make it to a small hospital just outside town, and after hours of pain and swearing, mostly Lila's, Nora's born. A tiny girl with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the neighbors. Amos is there, holding Lila's hand through every contraction, and when they lay Nora on her chest, Lila's sobbing, whispering, "You're my everything, little one." Amos just wipes his eyes with his sleeve and grumbles, "She's a fighter, like her mom." Life settles into a rhythm after that. Lila's back in the kitchen, baking with Nora strapped to her chest in a sling Amos rigged up from an old towel. She's got no money, no fancy setup, just grit and a dream. The tattered recipe cards in her tin box turn into batches of muffins, pies, anything she can sell. Amos pitches in, driving her stuff to local cafes, telling anyone who'll listen, "My granddaughter's got magic hands." By the time Nora's toddling around, Lila's saved enough to rent a little storefront. She calls it Nora's Sweet Haven, a name that sticks. It's not much, just a counter, a couple of tables, and an oven that's seen better days, but it's hers, and with Amos in her corner, she's starting to believe she can do this. The road ahead's long, but for the first time, Lila's not just surviving, she's building something real. Fast forward 10 years, and Lila's not that scared 19-year-old anymore. She's 29 now, and Nora's Sweet Haven isn't just a dream, it's the heartbeat of Dayton. What started as a hole-in-the-wall bakery with a rickety oven has turned into the kind of place people drive miles for. The air's always thick with the smell of fresh bread, cinnamon swirling from her famous sticky buns, and the display case is a rainbow of cupcakes and tarts. Lila's behind the counter every day, apron dusted with flour, her hands moving like they were born to shape dough. She's got a small crew now, 2 part-timers who can barely keep up with the orders, and a reputation that's spread beyond the town lines. People call her the bread lady, and she's damn proud of it. Nora's 10, a wiry little thing with her mom's dark hair and a mouth that doesn't quit. She's got this spark. Loves arguing with anyone who'll listen, whether it's Amos about why he should quit smoking or Lila about bedtime rules. She hangs out at the bakery after school, perched on a stool with her homework, sneaking bites of cookie dough when she thinks Lila's not looking. Amos is still around, grayer and slower, but he's the rock they lean on. He's traded his mechanic gigs for handyman work at the bakery, fixing leaky pipes, building extra shelves, grumbling the whole time but grinning when Nora calls him Pops. Lila's life is good, not glamorous, but solid. She's socked away every spare dime into a savings jar labeled Nora's Future, a dented old coffee can under her bed, stuffed with crumpled bills and loose change. College, maybe law school if Nora keeps up that debating streak. Lila's given up on love, though. Caleb burned her bad, and between raising Nora and running the shop, she's got no time for heartbreak. That is, until Jack Brennan walks through her door. It's a crisp fall day in 2008, leaves crunching underfoot outside, when Jack strolls in. He's 38, a little rough around the edges, tall with sharp green eyes and a 5 o'clock shadow that never quite goes away. He's a freelance investigative journalist, the kind who digs into shady city council deals and corporate scams. He's in Dayton chasing a story about small businesses fighting chain stores, and someone tipped him off about Lila's place. He's got a notebook in one hand, a coffee cup in the other, and when he sees her pulling a tray of pumpkin scones from the oven, he flashes a grin and says, "Smells like I hit the jackpot here." Lila's not impressed at first. She's dealt with nosy reporters before, guys who poke around, write a fluff piece, and bounce. But Jack's different. He sits at a corner table for hours, scribbling notes, asking questions that actually matter. How'd you keep this place alive when the big chains moved in? What's your secret? She shrugs, wiping her hands on her apron, and says, "No secret, just hard work and a kid who needs me to not screw up." He laughs, and there's something warm in it, something that sticks with her. The article comes out a month later, front page of the Dayton Observer, and it's a love letter to Nora's sweet haven, orders triple overnight. Lila's swamped, but she tracks Jack down to say thanks over coffee. One coffee turns into 2, then dinners, then late nights talking about everything. Her past, his messy divorce, their big dreams. Jack's steady, not flashy like Caleb, but real. He's got a quiet way of making her feel seen, and when he meets Nora, he wins her over by arguing mock court cases with her over pizza, letting her win every time. 2 years later, they're married in a small ceremony at the bakery. Nora's the flower girl. Amos walks Lila down the aisle, and the guests eat wedding cake Lila baked herself. Jack's not just a husband, he's a partner. He helps her open a second location, handles the paperwork she hates, and when Nora's 16, he's the one who finds her a scholarship to a pre-law program in Columbus. She's a natural, sharp, fearless, already dreaming of courtrooms and justice. By now, Lila's 44 and her life's a far cry from that rainy night she left home. She's got a family, not the one she was born into, but the one she built. Jack, Nora, Amos. They're her everything. But here's the thing, Lila's past isn't done with her yet. She's heard whispers over the years. Her parents struggling, the old house sold off, Gerald and Margaret fading into a quiet, regretful life. She doesn't reach out, doesn't want to. What they did still stings, a scar that never quite heals. She's moved on, or so she thinks, until one day, 25 years after that awful night, a knock on her door changes everything, and trust me, You're not gonna believe who's standing there, or what they've got to say. Okay, let's set the scene. It's 2025 now, and Lila's 44, living a life she fought tooth and nail to build. Nora's Sweet Haven isn't just a bakery anymore. It's a cornerstone of Dayton, with 2 bustling locations and a catering side hustle that's got her juggling wedding cakes and corporate orders like a pro. She's got Jack, her rock, still digging up dirt as a journalist and coming home with that easy smile she loves. Nora's 25, a hotshot lawyer in Columbus, cutting her teeth on big cases and making a name for herself. Amos is hanging in there, pushing 80-something, slower these days but still the proudest granddad around, bragging about Nora to his buddies over coffee at the diner. Lila's got a cozy house, a porch swing Jack built, and a family that's hers through and through. She's buried the past, or so she thinks. Then there's a knock. It's a cold December afternoon in 2025, a week before Christmas, and Lila's in the kitchen with Nora, who's home for the holidays. They're rolling out gingerbread dough, laughing about some client Nora outsmarted in court. Jack's out back splitting firewood, and the smart speakers humming holiday tunes. Think jazzy Nat King Cole vibes. The knock's soft at first, almost drowned out by the festive chaos, but it comes again. Sharp. Lila wipes her hands on a towel, grumbling, "Who's bothering us now?" and heads to the door. She opens it, and bam! There they are. Gerald and Margaret Harper, her parents, standing on her porch like they've stepped out of a time machine. They look rough. Gerald stooped, his hair a thin wisp of white, hands shoved in a frayed coat that's seen better days. Margaret's next to him, fragile, her face carved with wrinkles and her eyes puffy like she's been crying all the way from Ohio's backroads. Lila stops dead, her breath hitching. 25 years since they threw her out into the rain, and now they're here unannounced, staring at her like she's supposed to roll out the welcome mat. "Lila," Gerald rasps, his voice wobbly. "We had to see you." Margaret's clutching a scarf, tears already falling. "Please, honey, just give us a minute." Lila's stomach knots up, anger, pain, all that old hurt roaring back. "What do you want?" she bites out, her tone icy enough to freeze the snowflakes drifting down. "You don't get to waltz in after 25 years. Gerald winces, but he edges forward, hands out like a plea. "We messed up, Lila. Bad. We've hated ourselves for it every day since you walked out." Margaret's sobbing, words spilling fast. "We were ashamed, panicked about what people would say, but we should have had your back. We've missed you. Missed it all." Nora's at the door now, peering past Lila, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "Mom, who they?" she asks, sharp and curious. Lila's jaw clenches, but she doesn't break eye contact with her parents. "My mom and dad," she says, flat, like it's a title they don't deserve. Nora's brows shoot up. She knows the history, the wounds. But she holds her ground. Jack steps in from the yard, axe still in hand, sizing things up with that calm, watchful vibe of his. The air's heavy, crackling with decades of silence. Gerald presses on, his voice breaking. "We've kept tabs on you, Lila. Saw the bakery in the news, read about Nora. Our granddaughter a lawyer. We're so proud and so damn sorry we weren't there." Margaret nods, wiping her cheeks. "We lost the house years ago, hit rock bottom, but this isn't about money. We just want a shot to fix things." Lila's quiet fists balled at her sides. She spent a lifetime locking this door, and now it's creaking open whether she wants it or not. Nora steps up, cool and collected. "Mom, you don't owe them squat, but if you want to talk, I've got your back." Lila looks at her daughter, fierce, brilliant, the best thing she ever made. and something shifts. She's not that broken kid anymore. "Fine," she says, stepping aside. "Come in. Coffee. That's all you get." Gerald and Margaret shuffle inside, awkward and grateful, like they're stepping into a stranger's house, which in a way they are. They settle in the living room, Lila and Nora on the couch, Jack leaning against the wall, Gerald and Margaret teetering on an armchair like they might run. Coffee's poured, mugs steaming, but no one touches it. Amos hobbles in from the kitchen, cane thumping, and fixes his daughter and son-in-law with a glare. "About time you showed your faces," he growls, and Margaret shrinks. Gerald clears his throat, looking at Lila. "We've got a lot to say, but there's more. We ran into someone lately, someone you know, and it's complicated." Lila's eyes narrow. "What are you on about?" Margaret fidgets, glancing at Gerald, then back at Lila. "It's Caleb," she says, voice barely a whisper. "He's back in Ohio, and he's mixed up with Nora somehow." Lila's heart skips, and Nora leans in, frowning. "Caleb? My dad, Caleb?" The room goes dead quiet, every eye on Margaret. Whatever's coming next, it's about to flip Lila's world on its head, and believe me, you're not ready for this one. The living room's a powder keg, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. It's 2025, and Lila's 44, sitting there on her couch with Nora beside her, Jack hovering like a guard dog, and Amos glaring daggers from his armchair. Gerald and Margaret, her parents, are perched across from her, coffee untouched, looking like they've aged 100 years since they walked in. They've just dropped Caleb's name, Lila's old flame, Nora's deadbeat dad. And the air's buzzing with questions. Lila's voice is steel when she snaps. "What do you mean Caleb's mixed up with Nora? Explain, now!" Gerald shifts, uneasy, his hands wringing that old coat of his. "We didn't plan to see him," he starts, voice low. "A few months back we were at a bar in Cleveland, rough place, just grabbing a drink to forget our troubles. This guy gets up on stage, guitar in hand, and starts playing. Took us a minute, but we realized it was Caleb Dawson. Older, grayer, but still got that same swagger." Margaret cuts in, her eyes flicking to Nora. "He's not some small-time musician anymore, Lila. He's big. Tours, records, the works. We didn't talk to him that night, just watched. But then we heard something else." Lila's stomach churns. She hasn't thought about Caleb in years, not really. "He's a shadow she buried when Nora was born." "Heard what?" she presses, leaning forward. Gerald swallows hard. Word around town was been in some legal mess. Sued by a promoter for skipping out on a tour. Hired a lawyer out of Columbus to fix it. A young hotshot who won the case clean. He looks at Nora, and it hits Lila like a freight train. Nora's eyes widen, her lawyer brain clicking fast. "Wait," she says, voice sharp. "You're not saying..." Margaret nods, tears spilling again. "We saw it in the paper later, Nora. The lawyer's name, Nora Harper. We didn't believe it at first, but then we saw your picture. It's you. Caleb hired you, and he doesn't even know you're his daughter." The room spins. Lila's hands grip the couch, her breath short. Nora's jaw drops, and she stammers, That's insane. I worked a case last spring. Some washed-up rocker named Caleb Dawson. He was a jerk, barely showed up to meetings, but I won it, got him off with a slap on the wrist." She turns to Lila, eyes wild. "Mom, I had no idea. He never said anything about you." Jack lets out a low whistle, stepping closer. "Holy hell. That's one hell of a coincidence." Amos snorts, his cane tapping the floor. "Coincidence, my ass. Sounds like fate kicking that fool in the teeth. Lila's head's reeling. Caleb, the guy who ditched her pregnant and broke, has no clue he's been face to face with their daughter, the daughter he never bothered to know. And Nora, she's just handed him a win, all while building a life he'll never touch. Gerald's voice cuts through the chaos, softer now. When we put it together, we knew we had to tell you, Lila. He's out there living his big life, and here you are, stronger than he'll ever be. Nora's proof of that. Margaret's sobbing quietly. We're so sorry we pushed you away. Seeing what you've done, what Nora's become, it's more than we deserve to witness. Lila's staring at them, then at Nora, her mind racing. This isn't just about her parents anymore, it's about Caleb too. The ultimate payback isn't her success alone, it's Nora standing tall, outshining the man who left them behind. Nora's the first to break the silence, her voice steady despite the shock. I won his case, yeah, but if I'd known who he was, I'd have made him squirm a little first. She smirks, a glint in her eye, and Lila can't help it. She laughs, a raw, shaky sound. That's my girl, she says, pride cutting through the mess. Jack grins, resting a hand on her shoulder. Sounds like you've already got your revenge, babe. He's got no idea what he's missed. Lila looks at her parents, then back at Nora. The twist is still sinking in. Caleb's out there, oblivious, while her daughter's already beaten him at his own game. It's a sweet kind of justice, but it's not over yet. Nora's got that look, the one that says she's not done digging. And Lila, she's starting to wonder what happens when the past doesn't just knock. It kicks the door down. Stick around, because this family's got one more move to make. So here we are, 2025, the air still buzzing in Lila's living room after that bombshell about Caleb. She's 44, sitting there with Nora's hand in hers, Jack close by, and Amos watching it all with a mix of pride and exhaustion. Gerald and Margaret, her parents, are across from her, heads bowed, waiting for her to say something. Anything. The coffee's gone cold. The Christmas lights outside twinkling through the window, but inside it's like time's holding its breath. Lila's mind's a whirlwind. Caleb out there clueless, while Nora's already outdone him. Her parents begging for a second chance after 25 years. It's a lot. She finally looks up, her voice quiet but firm. I'm not ready to forgive you, she says to Gerald and Margaret, watching them deflate. What you did, it cut deep, and I've built this life without you. But Nora's here, and if she wants to know you, I won't stop her. One more coffee, maybe, down the road. That's all I've got right now. Gerald nods, tears tracking down his weathered face, and Margaret whispers, Thank you, Lila. That's more than we deserve. They stand, shaky, and head for the door, leaving a fragile thread of possibility hanging in the air. Nora's still processing, her lawyer brain already spinning. I'm gonna find Caleb, she says, half to herself, a fire in her eyes. Not today, but soon. He needs to know who I am and what he lost. Lila squeezes her hand, a faint smile breaking through. You do you, kid. Just don't let him off easy. Jack chuckles, pulling Lila close, and Amos mutters, Damn right. The room settles, and as the door clicks shut behind her parents, Nora heads to the piano in the corner, a beat-up old thing Jack restored, and starts playing. Soft notes fill the space, a melody that feels like healing, like hope. Here's the thing. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's living better than the ones who hurt you. building a family that lasts. Lila's proof of that. And as Nora's music drifts out into the night, you can't help but wonder, what's next for them?